Welcome to the Industry Trends and Insights Show, a reliability radio series with your host, Bob Francis, Research and Strategy Leader at Reliability Web. Each episode is designed to bring you key findings from the Industry Trends and Insights Research Program, interviews with leaders in the community, and the latest innovations shaping maintenance, reliability, and asset management. Now, here's today's episode.
Well, hello and welcome. It's Bob Francis with another episode of the Industry Trends and Insights Show. Super excited to have Ben from Cal Water on and Tacoma, the CEO of Mentor APM on today. We're talking how to deal with data issues in your Maximo EAM system. So, Ben, tell us a little bit about your name, your role, and your position there at Cal Water.
Yeah, happy to. My name's Ben. I'm the Field Services Manager for California Water Service in the state of California. We manage a variety of districts ranging from Chico up in the northern part of the state all the way down to Los Angeles County with about 500,000 service connections in between. So my team's tasked with taking care of all the electrical and rotating assets and tanks of all the stations top to bottom.
And you use IBM Maximo as your platform for managing assets, as I understand it.
Yeah, Cal Water has been a long-term user of Maximo, and that was one of the primary challenges when I came on board with Cal Water about 4 years ago, was I noticed that they were only utilizing a very small percentage of Maximo's capabilities and features. And so we've been trying to really invest in gaining the value from those and building out those core competencies, reports, and features.
Fantastic. And a very familiar story with our audience who are wanting to utilize more and more capabilities. They know they're paying for it. They're just looking for guidance on and how to maximize that capability. So that takes us to our solution providers that help enable better utilization, much more effective and efficiency in those systems. And one of those, if you're not familiar with Mentor APM, one of the leaders in the space, joining us also on this show is Tacoma Zach, the CEO of Mentor APM. Tacoma, give us an introduction and give us a brief intro on Mentor APM.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having us. And this is a privilege, and we always enjoy doing things like this. So again, my name is Tacoma Zach, CEO, co-founder of Mentor APM. A little bit of the backstory, which is actually important, which helps us understand what we do as a company. So Mentor APM is a sort of an end-to-end asset management, asset performance management suite of services or of capabilities. And it was really an outgrowth of having been in the operations business and the operations field for 20, 25 years of my career. So we knew that there were some particular challenges out in the field that we thought we could solve really, really, really well. And so I think when we look at the overall complement of the suite of solutions, they really attack specific elements of what typical operations require, everything from asset investment planners, risk analysis. We still actually are actively involved in risk analysis, and I'm actually still an SME in that category. Plus ISO 55000 integrating with that, because we all know that that's important for long-term sustainable operations. But particularly, and this is one of the funnest parts of my job, is that we get to see, what the market needs are and where customers struggle. And in this particular age of AI, it is the most fun it has ever been, because we're able to now build really quickly, really where some of the real needs are that are holding every utility back from realizing the maximum value from their investment, like a Maximo, and really getting the max value out of their assets and their asset portfolio for the long-term, situation that they're supposed to be delivering, whether it's water or wastewater services. These assets in the ground need to be managed better. And so I think with what we've done, it's just a really, really neat targeted solution at a very big, broad problem.
Right. So Ben, let's define for the audience the scope of this case that we're discussing today. How did the problem statement get put together? How did you develop the scope for the project? I mean, really, what was the problem? I'm sure there were many, but in terms of this project that we're discussing today, define that for our audience. What were we trying to solve?
In my mind, the biggest challenge was the scaling issues that we were facing. Because when you've got a state's worth of assets and something on the order of 3,000 control valves and another 1,000 motor control centers and hundreds of generators, just the data entry and collection process is daunting. You've got limited staff that all have other things to focus on. And so taking expensive field techs and making them do data entry was not something we were real keen on. But at the same time, we recognized that we really needed to put higher quality data into our Maximo system. And then if we're even going to have a hope of leveraging risk analysis, the classic 5x5 matrices on consequence and probability and all that other fun stuff that, is our bread and butter.
Right. Okay, Tacoma. So how did we tee up the solution? Hearing Ben's problem and studying the scope of what they were trying to solve for this project, talk to us about how you and your team put together the solution, and a little bit about Mentor Lens, which I think is really focused in this area, especially on that data question that every industrial and municipality is wrestling with.
Thanks. Yeah. So a little bit about Mentor Lens first. And I mentioned AI before, and Lens is really an AI-enabled asset data collection and enrichment platform. And what we found is that, and Ben's organization is no different than most of the rest, and that is there's an incomplete data record in everybody's CMMS, and it's not a problem that you can fix by sitting at a terminal. The fact is that there's data out in the field that's never been captured. It's about plate data and it's about condition information and, but much more of that. And so if you sort of summarize it, most people's asset records are incomplete or insufficient. And then, sort of one word, they're broken. They're just not up to snuff. So what Lens allows us to do is really help organization capture that information of those physical assets out in the field just by taking some photos. So you really go ahead and just take some photos of the asset, take photos of the blade, take photos of the tags, take photos of the actual assets itself, a full 360, and you just take those photos and it automatically captures that tag information, the plate information, the condition information, and it does a very, very rapid condition assessment on those assets that allow us, or that are standardized against, call it an RCM grade set of condition elements that are all tied back to the failure modes. What this does, though, is that this unifies all the data then about every particular asset, puts it into a structured database that is then governed as well, and we export that data to someone like Maximo, that then has it ready for whatever other analysis that they want to do with that particular data. What Lens does is it'll pull all that information together and it'll provide that then in a completed, enriched data set for Maximo users to be able to use elsewhere. It's super easy, super low friction. And when Ben came to us, it seemed that that the challenge that they were facing is very much the reason why we built Lens, and is the challenge that almost every other utility in North America faces.
It's so timely, Tacoma, because this morning I was at a meeting of the AMP, the Association for Asset Management Professionals Arizona chapter. It was hosted by CAP, Central Arizona Project here in North Phoenix. But sitting to my right, Tucson Water. They brought 7 members of their team up from Tucson this morning, drove 2.5 hours up for this meeting. On the other side of me, Scottsdale Water, City of Chandler. So we had many of the Arizona water utilities, municipalities, leaders all in one room this morning. Everything you described, Ben, everything that you just outlined there, Tacoma, was discussed this morning. And my point being, this is not a Ben problem or a California water problem, as Tacoma just laid out. This is a universal challenge. So Ben, how did you, what were the metrics when your bosses, Typically in an organization like yours, I've worked in the municipalities and state utilities a few times in my career. Someone's accountable. Someone wants to understand, okay, we commissioned this project. How are we measuring success? So, Ben, what were some of those success metrics? How did you engage with Tacoma and the Mentor APM team and be able to start collecting data and understand, are we making progress?
Well, I was really excited when I heard that Mentor was about some of the features and capabilities that they were building into Lens, and we wanted to give it a shot. And so we engaged with them in a pilot to kind of do a critical evaluation and really stress test their product against what our expectations were going to be. I was not just pleased with what we were able to collect, but the speed and the time savings were huge, because it's not just the collection speed of being able to take pictures like Tacoma was saying and get the nameplate and the condition and the asset information and then and input it, but you're saving so much time on validating that information when it goes to your EAM group. You're not having to send in emails or Excel spreadsheets with the chance of human input errors. And, we benchmarked it, kind of an A/B test against assets like a big storage tank, where we had already done a full professional engineering evaluation of its condition. And then we used Mentor Lens side by side to see how well it would match. And our tanks manager, we were talking about it, and I think what we decided was it was almost insulting how fast Mentor Lens not only evaluated it with the exact same ratings that we came up with, but it was so quick and accurate. It was we were quite surprised.
Wow. So sort of a force multiplier with limited resources. This if you would pardon the term, bought a lot of man hours because it freed up your team because of the speed and efficiency of the technology. Tacoma, this is obviously no surprise to you. This is how you design the system, but talk about scaling that. Where not just for Ben, but in the industry, since like I said, I just heard the same set of issues and challenges from 4 other water utilities this morning. So clearly there's a scalability opportunity here. So if this was a pilot, what is the next steps for this? And is this applicable across the utilities industry at large?
Well, I can't talk about the contractual status that we've got right now, but as far as scalability is concerned, I wanted, in keeping with that, I wanted to touch on something that was mentioned. We've been recently thinking about kind of like, there's such a massive advantage to using something like Lens for every organization. It's not just a force multiplier. We had a customer that said, this is like having an entirely, like an additional preventative maintenance manager on staff. And as we were looking at this yesterday, this is not something that says, oh, you're going to be able to reduce your staff. What this does is this helps you attack all the backlog of all the stuff you can't do that you don't have data for. You're making, call it sort of shotgun decisions, or everything is kind of critical, therefore nothing is, right? Everything's equalized. This lets any organization be able to catch up really quickly, to be able to make those kinds of decisions, literally just by going out, by taking pictures. And that's what leads us to the scalability, that it doesn't matter how many assets or how many people in the organization, or how many organizations want to take on the platform. Everything has been designed for the application to be scaled to the largest facilities across North America. Then, as far as the scale of the problem is concerned, we did an initial evaluation that we then had an independent evaluation done by Verdantix. And we found that it is not only the water wastewater sector, but every asset intensive sector has this same problem, whether it's power, whether it's chemical, light chemical or heavy chemical industry, oil and gas, pulp and paper, you name it. Every single entity out there has this problem of, call it broken data, insufficient data. So the scale, the applicability, so, if there are Maximo users out there that are perhaps not in water, wastewater, but are in an adjacent facility, data centers, for instance, this is completely applicable to that.
Fantastic. Ben, what's next? So the pilot was successful. How is this going to move the project along? What is the next set of challenges you're going after?
Yeah, so we ended up testing it on kind of a cross section of assets at different stations, and we're really pleased. I mean, everything that Tacoma said was absolutely on point in our experience. We saw that the accuracy was there. We saw that the conditions were coming in, and we saw it as just a big accelerator in our asset management maturity process. We're really trying to build more capability into Maximo so that we can utilize the reporting tools and make better decisions instead of gathering information manually and then trying to reconcile and gauge how accurate it is. And so this was a great way to do that. And so we're excited to get this started with them.
And that really, Bennett, really, my experience here is this really starts momentum and builds better adoption, right? You certainly have some users in your organization that are used to a certain workflow and a work process, but now the capabilities are opened up so much more, and they see the evidence with a project like this of, oh my gosh, I have nothing to fear here. This is all good. This is all benefit. This all helps me perform my task, do my job better.
100%. And I can't tell you how helpful it is for me in my role, being able to give a tool to my guys in the field that they're excited about because it reduces their workload, but also all of my superiors and the people that I report to are excited because they're getting better data from the field. And I don't have to ask for additional headcount or more consultants or additional manpower to get that done. And so that was huge. Plus, we're able to build much better reports with higher quality information in much better places. So as soon as people see, you mean I don't have to wrestle with Excel spreadsheets for hours and then argue about the accuracy? Nope, we don't have to do that. So game changer in terms of, and that has repercussions in our rate case filings, going to the utility commission, building our budgets out. All of that has been impacted positively by this test and this process.
Fantastic.
I got a question for Ben, if I could ask a question.
Oh, let's go. Yeah, do it.
Yeah, real quick. So Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you guys, there's a two-part question here. So one is, I think you did thermography as well. And why was it you guys wanted to test that? And then the second thing is I got the impression that this isn't sort of like a once and done kind of thing, that the intent is to use this ongoing, and that sort of feeds back into the thermography question. Why that?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I know it does kind of, this is something that we want to continue using, not just for the immediate benefits are collecting asset information, updating the registry, validating all the information as it goes in, but the ongoing maintenance, operation, and reliability focus that we've got on all those assets is why we wanted to make sure that we tested out the thermography features. And that was one of the first questions we had was, is it going to require a big, expensive camera to do? And no, we were really pleased with the results that we were able to get with a camera just plugged directly in any Android or any mobile phone. So we were able to get good information, conductor temperature, hotspot identification, and one of the and this is going to get a little technical here, so forgive me. One of the primary challenges with thermography is interpretation of the data. So you get a rainbow colored spectral graph of hotspots and what people interpret in terms of red, yellow, orange, and every color in between shifts, especially with background ambient temperatures. And if you're not looking at an exactly scaled image the last time you took it, which is a lot of time a year or two ago, it's difficult to spot those changes. Mentor took that out and was able to identify changes over time compared to the last photo it was taken, and that was pretty exciting for us. I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question, Tacoma?
Well, that was kind of it. You answered it. Why the thermography and the ongoing need, which is to do this on a whatever cadence you want.
Yeah, and not just thermography, but also pick up through those pictures year over year changes in condition over time. Because when you've got a service area as large as we do, and about 35 guys who are out in the field, everybody's going to have their own interpretation of where those assets' conditions lie on that classic 1 to 5 scale. And everybody can recognize something that's brand new in a condition 1, and everybody can usually recognize something that's in a failed state or a condition 5. But that middle zone is where people's judgment calls come in, and people get used to what they see every day. So getting some consistency in the way that those are applied statewide, regardless of whether it's a senior or a junior technician who's looking at it, was a big change also, and gives us a lot more confidence going into our rate case filings when we're making a case for capital improvement planning and how much funding needs to be assigned to each of these districts every year.
Wow. Fantastic. What a great case. What a great documentation and story to go along with it. Tacoma, one of the reasons we wanted to record this episode and ask Ben to be on was because they're a Maximo user, and Maximo World is coming up here in a few weeks. So if folks out there in the Reliability Web community hear this episode and they identify, wow, I'm Ben in this story, I'm wrestling with that. At Maximo World, what else should folks expect to see at the Mentor APM stand? What other parts of Lens that maybe were not a part of Ben's case? What else are you going to be showing, I guess, is my question.
Well, yeah, thanks. So one, we do have a very nice booth. It'll be big and blue like our typical marketing colors, et cetera. And there'll be a nice light up thing on the side as well. And it'll be very clear that we're talking about Lens. There's a couple of other things that we've got in there. So having come from the O&M field and having run utilities, we're always saying, okay, what was it that we wanted that was valuable to us so that we can make better decisions? Well, one of them is replacement value. So we automatically put something in is that once we have the plate data, we've actually gone out and we find replacement value for that asset. What's the current market price? What's the current price as is in its used condition? And maybe even like what's the eBay price? And if it doesn't exist anymore, it'll actually recommend an in-kind replacement. So it's, we're continually refining the algorithm, and now we've gotten to the point that we're actually able to parse it out, with great detail, and we surface every place that we get that information from. The other part is to go get the manuals. And so we'll go actually automatically and download all the manuals for that piece of equipment, and attach everything to the asset record. So everything is available for use, because if you want to extract the PMs and all that other kind of stuff. The other really cool part is video. We actually do video analysis. So if somebody wants to video their assets, either in operation or they want to stick it into a drone, or, and they would take drone video from higher altitude, whether it's poles or whether it's rooftops or whatever it ends up being, we can analyze that as well. And in that video analysis, we have the ability to create any type of condition assessment matrix according to any standard you might want to upload. So if you have a particular esoteric standard that you are insisting on using, or you've developed your own particular one, or it's an ASTM standard or whatever it is, you literally just load it up, you tell them how many parameters you want it to take a look at, and it will create the standard for you, and it will measure everything it sees according to that, whatever standard that is, in seconds. So it's really designed for a lot more sort of the advanced stuff, and the sort of, I don't want to say a little more edge case, but a little bit less common. But as far as the rest of the Mentor application is concerned, everything is designed with RCM in mind. Everything is linked back to failure modes and how things should be gauged, et cetera. So I'm just trying to think, was there anything else that we have in there? Reports. Reports are automatically generated as well. Oh, and this is actually really important too. There's great products out there. We standardize on FLIR. And now we're actually in the FLIR ecosystem. So if you get their larger cameras, with their own screens, you can pull us up and you can do the whole Mentor lens exercise and application from inside a FLIR ecosystem. But we've the FLIR cameras lend themselves to being able to analyze the actual images. So we're actually able to dig in and find areas and find averages and pixel by pixel inside those FLIR camera images. So that, the stuff that Ben is talking about, you can go into some really deep analysis if you're interested.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, this is why we do the Industry Trends and Insights show, is to hear about innovation, and not just innovation on a whiteboard in somebody's suite somewhere. No, it's actually applicable in the field. And as Ben testified, this product and all the technology and AI that not just Mentor, but the other solution providers are bringing to the market, there are leaders. And we've heard from two of those leaders today. So Ben, thank you from California Water, sharing your story with us today. Great success. Can't wait to see the next chapter of what you're doing there, especially with adoption of those Maximo users. That's a great part of the story. And Tacoma, we look forward to seeing you at Maximo World in a few weeks to hear many more stories, just like Ben's, of your other customer successes. And I'm sure there's quite a few Maximo users out there that are struggling, as we heard this morning at the AMP meeting, with this same set of issues, who will be excited to talk to you. I'm Bob Francis, your host here for Industry Trends and Insights. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Tacoma. We'll see you next time here on the podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the Industry Trends and Insights show on Reliability Radio with your host, Bob Francis, Research and Strategy Leader at Reliability Web. This series is produced to bring you the latest research findings and innovations impacting the maintenance, reliability, and asset management community. For all episodes, research reports, and more insights, visit reliabilityweb.com or find the show on your favorite podcasting platform. And remember, leaders lead. Stay ahead of the curve, and we'll catch you next time on the Industry Trends and Insights show.